So, guys, I have recently watched the Rwby Volume 9 ending animatic, and I just gotta say this, I loved it. I thought it was good. Obviously, it's not the best thing in the world, and I wish it was fully animated, but for what we got, I think it's really good. Anyway, since Volume 9 is on my brain again, you know, he naturally just popped into my mind, and it's Jaune, and what is going on with his age. So I looked into it, and it got pretty crazy. Now, let's start with just general information that we can kind of use, okay? So, Team Rwby, not Jaune, only Team Rwby spent, I would argue, 2 days in the Ever After, okay? And in that time, we saw so many things happen on Remnant. We saw characters grieve, mourn, and try to put the world back together. We found out that Beacon fell again. We found out that Winter kind of took up the major power role and all kinds of things. A crazy amount of stuff happened in that epilogue. And keep in mind, that feels like what is over the span of, I would argue, it at least has to be a week. Minimum a week. However, I believe all that stuff happened over the span of 1 or 2 months. So, we can naturally divide that. So, Team Rwby spent 2 days in the Ever After, right? If we say that all of that stuff happened in 2 weeks, all of the events of the epilogue, and Beyond, by the way, because that's coming out soon. This was obviously made before that. But anyway, so all that stuff happened in exactly 2 weeks. That would equate to 1 week of Remnant time equals 1 day of Ever After time. However, if you say it took place over 4 weeks, that would mean that for every 2 weeks in Remnant equals 1 day in the Ever After. Or, my personal belief is that 1 month of Remnant, I should say, is equated to 1 day in Ever After in time. Now, what does this mean? This means that anyone trapped in there, like Jaune, would naturally age much slower. So even though the book has been out for a long time, it should mean that he ages relatively differently from the rest of the people around him. But anyway, how long was he in the Ever After then, in comparison to our world? Well, okay, I'm gonna get this out of the way. I tried to brute force this in one of my calculations, and that was me counting how many times the sun went up and down. And from what I got going by frame, Jaune only went back 30 days, so the max he could be is 20. And I'm gonna be frank, that is not a 20-year-old man. I'm sorry, that's just the fact. That's not a 20-year-old guy. Anyway, but we do have other ways to calculate it. Now, I'm going to start off with this. Thanks to Rwby Roman Holiday, we know that Neo read The Girl Who Fell Through the World when she was really young. So, for a time frame, we can say that the book is 25 years old to calculate the maximum of Jaune's age. However, I did calculate it for 25, 50, 75, and even 100 years. So even if you say that Jaune is 100, even if you say that book came out 100 years ago, I have a calculation for that, so don't you worry. And I will show you all that later on. Anyway, let's get started with the general calculations. So, for the basis, we are going to have, for our baseline, basically, the oldest we can make Jaune in this instance is equating 1 week of Remnant time to 1 day of Ever After time. So, to do that, we're going to have to determine how many weeks are in a year. And there are 52.1 weeks in a year. So for 25 years in Remnant's time, or 1,303 weeks, that is equivalent to 1,303 days in the ever after, or 3.5 years, meaning that Jaune is 25 if we go by Neapolitan's age. However, if we date the book back much older and equate it to being an old fairy tale, then we get into the corresponding ages that allow him to jump up quite rapidly. So for 50 years in ever after time, or 50 years in remnants time, that would be the equivalent of 7.1 years in the ever after, meaning Jaune would be 26. 75 years on remnant would be the equivalent of 10.7 years in the ever after, meaning Jaune is either 29 or 30. Or if you highball it and say 100 years since the publication, or since the creation of the fairy tale, that would only mean that 14.2 years have passed in the ever after, meaning that Jaune would only be 33. However, that's if we're saying that 1 week of remnants time is equivalent to 1 day in the ever after. Let's assume a little bit worse of the people of remnant, okay? Let's say that it took 4 weeks for them to fully mourn Team Rwby and all those who fell in Atlas and get situation. Okay? Well, what does this mean then? Well, this means for every 2 weeks of remnants time equals 1 day of the ever after time. Where does this lead us? Well, then you would basically divide all of the afflicted numbers in half, basically meaning that instead of it being, that would mean that for 25 years in remnant, Jaune would have spent 1.7 years in the ever after, meaning Jaune is 21. If you jump up to 50, then Jaune only spent 3.5 years, meaning his age gets bumped up to 22. If 75 years passed on remnant, then that means only 5.3 passed for Jaune, meaning he's only 24 in the ever after. But the big number again, 100 years on remnant. That does not matter, because that only bumps him up to 26, meaning that only 7.1 years have passed in the ever after for him. Keep in mind that's 100 years. But we can further downgrade this number again. Meaning, so 1 month on remnant is equivalent to 1 day in the ever after. I'm basing this one off of what I believe is the most likely amount of time. I do not personally think that it would take an entire civilization only 4 weeks to fully integrate into Vacuo, and on top of that, have another similarly large population be transported across a continent to Vacuo as well. I believe that would at least take 2 months, meaning that, as I stated prior, 1 month of remnants time equals 1 day in the ever after. I feel that that is the safest bet. However, that also gives us the shortest amount of time Jaune was spent in the ever after. So, in short, if the book came out 25 years prior to the current events, that would mean 300 months have passed, or 300 months have passed since on remnant. That would only mean that 300 days have passed in the ever after, not even a full year. That would mean that Jaune is only 20 when we see him in Volume 9, which I do not believe. However, if you say that 50 years have passed since the book was first published, that would mean that 600 days have passed, meaning 600 ever after in days have passed, meaning 1.6 years have passed. So then, Jaune is 21. But if you bump it up even higher to 75, that's 900 months, 900 days, 2.4 years of ever after in time, Therefore, Jaune is 21 or 22. However, if you bump it up to 100 years, that's only 1,200 months, or 1,200 days in the ever after, meaning that it's only 3.2 years, meaning at most, Jaune can be in the ranges of 22 or 23 then. So, I have shown you this entire graph. Why did I do this? It is because I want to show you Jaune aged like milk. The max amount of time Jaune could have possibly spent in the ever after. And keep in mind, this is us highballing everything. This is only assuming that 1 week in the ever after equals 1 day in real life, which, as I said, is highly unlikely. And we say that it's been 100 years since it's been 100 years since the creation of the book or fairy tale, right? If you highball both of those instances to get Jaune's age to the farthest possible number it can reasonably reach in this scenario, using the math I have provided below, that would mean he is only 33. So, it is safe to say, after all of this, Jaune is not actually as old as we think. Because no matter which way you slice it, most likely he is in his 20s, but he looks like this. I'm just gonna say it. At this point, we might as well just say it's all stress. Because, I'm sorry, that is... that's an interesting way to look at a 20-something-year-old. Anyway, this was a very fun video. It's a little bit of a unique topic. For anyone wondering, I'm planning to show you I'll show you all my calculations in either the description below or a comment. So if you're interested in that, just check out everything. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you all had fun, because I sure as hell did. And without further ado, goodbye!